A lot of news dropped this weekend with the Warhammer the Old World, the first news we've had in a long time. Actually, it was kind of funny. I was starting to think they were giving up on the project entirely, and then Warhammer Day came and passed, and there was nothing really new about it. But Games Workshop did deliver in a big way, and we got some new maps and news about Warhammer the Old World, which will hopefully be coming in 2023 in time for the 40th anniversary. But what we're going to do is we're going to get into the new map that dropped and take a look at what we have so far and what we know, what we can suppose about where the world is going and what we can look forward to coming up. So what we saw coming in, this is the old map that we had prior to the drop this weekend. It was great. We were super excited about it. But what you can see is that there was definitely some new shading. There's a lot more detail. There's some more border lines added into the in between the provinces. There's a lot of more forests and mountains added in there as well. You'll also be able to see that there's a lot of, importantly, icons that are denoting races and political entities, which is great for people who are really into mapping out their storyline, not just playing an army, but also theming their armies or theming their storylines. So this is great stuff for people who have been following the storyline of the Old World and Warhammer in general for a long time. Just as a recap, from what we understand, this is taking place, Warhammer the Old World is taking place during the Great Invasion of Chaos. So imperial year 2300s rather than the end times era, which is when Warhammer traditionally has taken place in the 2500s. So we're going to be looking at about 200 years prior. This is definitely going to be a different era for us. Scoping in on a particular era, this is the Empire, and I apologize for the low res, but we don't really have a great picture of it. But this is the political entity that represents in the modern world Germany, essentially. And the Empire is split up into provinces. So you've got the Wasteland, the Reichland, Stirland, Averland, the Moot. And these correspond to, this is your primary human entity. So this is where humans live, and this is where a lot of people start with their Warhammer journey. What we're seeing here is there's a rather than the empire that we know and love from Warhammer Fantasy, which was under the command of Karl Franz, the Elector from the Reich, there is no one emperor, and this corresponds historically to the Imperial Three Emperors period, where the empire was split up politically. And you'll notice there are a lot of shields on here, but these four shields are much larger. So the shield of Marienburg, the Reichland, Talbotland, and Middenland. So whether that's implying that these four emperors are the ones vying, or these three claimants are vying for the imperial throne, we'll have to see. I had actually thought that Nuln of Averland was the one that was a big contender at the time, but I don't know, we'll have to see. When it comes to the map itself, I'm actually going to impose an old map over it because, again, this one's a little hard to see. But you'll notice, take a look at the entities here and then just keep looking at it. This is a previous edition of the game from Warhammer Fantasy, and you'll notice that it's actually not all that different. You know, so notice Altdorf is still on here, Marienburg is still in the same place in the Wasteland. Talbotland is a little bit bigger, a little more prominent. The Moot has moved over a little bit further down to here, but in general, it's all looking like it's in pretty much the same place. Which is great because it's keeping the same kind of continuity that we've come to expect from the world. They're not changing a whole lot. Bretonnia, we did get confirmation this weekend, some new concept art in the form of this peasant fellow here. Now, Bretonnia isn't changing in the fact that it looks roughly the same. This is the same shape of Bretonnia that we've come to expect. It's roughly contiguous to France in the modern world, in the real world. It takes place on the far western coast of the Old World, closest to Ulthuan, which is why we're getting some elves here. The elves are also probably here because, again, Great War on Chaos. The elves are arriving in the New World for the first, or the Old World, sorry, for the first time since the War of the Beard to fight Chaos, which was a big deal for them. And it's the first time we're able to see them interacting with races outside of Ulthuan and outside of their polity there. But what you will notice from previous editions is the shields, which are going to be very different because, again, at 200 years in the past, a nobleman's shield is going to be different. It's not the same king, it's not the same dynasty necessarily. King Lewin Orcslayer is a historical figure from what we're familiar with, but of course now he's not historical. Now he's going to be the person we're playing on the field with necessarily. So this is going to be super fun to get into with our models on the table, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any changes to the actual tabletop because it was heavily implied in the book that things like the trebuchet, for example, were a new invention and not something that we were able to use in the past. It was something that had just been created. So maybe we won't have that. It'll be more errantry war facing. Now, they did not have any evidence of Bretonnian, of any Fey Enchantress or anything on here. That wasn't part of the concept art. And she's notably not on the coat of arms for Carascone, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing. So I wonder if that's going to be playing in there as well. We'll have to take a look and see. One of the most prominent parts of the map, and also from what we're understanding from what Games Workshop has told us in their press releases, is Kislev is getting a major facelift. In Warhammer Fantasy, they unfortunately didn't get a lot of love. They got a little bit of attention during the Storm of Chaos campaign because Kislev's always been the doorstep between the Empire and and Chaos, just geographically. They're the first place that Chaos hits. Chaos being up here and the Empire being down here. But so unfortunately, they always get the brunt of it, and nowhere was that greater true than during the Great War on Chaos. So I'm going to just use one of the previous iterations they gave us a couple of months ago, and we're seeing a lot of detail here. So previously, Kislev was really just Kislev, Prague, and Ehrenberg. That was everything we knew about Kislev, but now look, we're getting a lot of forests, we're getting the mountains, we're getting these different kinds of polities here. It'll be really great. It actually plays in really well with Warhammer 3 Total War, if you haven't played that, where we also got a lot of an individual look at the Kislev state. Going back to the Great War, yeah, it is important that we see a lot of this area, especially if they are going very thematic. At least from what we know historically, Asvar Kull, the Archaon of his time, invaded from the north, crushed the Norse dwarves who lived here previously and no more, but we are seeing that at this time they are still there, destroyed those areas, and then completely laid waste to Prague, which, while it does exist in the future, was so heavily warped by chaos that the walls literally ran and screamed as if they were still in pain from the invasion. So it will be, this is definitely going to be an area that we should expect to see some new models come out and some new rules come out for the first time, which unfortunately we missed during the fantasy era. One part of the map that didn't get any TLC, which is a real shame, was Tilia and Estalia. This is roughly contiguous to Spain and Italy in the real world, and they were in Warhammer 3rd edition. So back in the 90s, they were the Dogs of War portion of the playable tabletop, and essentially they're mercenary companies, but they do have a rich history of Italian city-state themed places, Magrida, Bilboa. They're also the birthplace of the Skaven, which is roughly here-ish. Skavenblade is here, and so it's a little weird. I don't think that they're not doing anything with it, just because it's so odd that there's nothing. Like, there's no writing, there's no detail work, there's nothing going on here at all. And that seems a little odd, considering that even over here, they bothered to put a pirate ship. Clearly, there's details in the vaults, there's details in Bretonnia, and there's details in the Badlands. So I think that they're just hiding this for right now. So if you are a Dogs of War fanatic, just don't worry. This is, I'm sure, just under construction. We will be getting this in the future, I'm sure. But we don't have much to say about that yet, and we're going to move on to the Borderlands, who have the Border Princes, sorry, and the Badlands, who have gotten a significant amount of TLC from them. So the Border Princes represent kind of the Balkan states, the Balkan states, Middle East, crusading area for the Warhammer world. And they have been a great area of interest for storytelling because they represent a middle, kind of like a melting pot, where imperial princes, Bretonnian lords, the dwarf kingdoms, elven princes, everyone can kind of mix and mingle there and fight it out. And that's been a place where you could do the Dogs of War in the 90s. They had the General's Handbook in the 2000s, and it looks like now we're going to get to go back there again in Warhammer the Old World. We did get this nice, really detailed map, which is the delta right at the top of the map we saw over here. And you'll notice there are imperial-sounding names. There's the dwarf capital of Karaz-Karak, and then there's also some more orcish encampments. There's some places that look like they may be, if you look, there's a chalice filled with blood that looks at least like it could be vampire counts. There is Caritamon's tomb, which thematically very much appears to be Tomb Kings. So there seems to be very much like there could be anything going on down here, and that's great for everybody. Bretonnians, I can't forget them. So we've got a lot going on here, and it's very, very fun for everybody. Also a variety of terrains for your battlefield pleasure. We've got mountains and forests and rivers and deserts. So the Borderlands and the Badlands and Border Princes might be the primary place where we're going to be fighting things out in Warhammer the Old World when we're not talking about the actual Chaos Invasion, and that'll be super fun. Next, we're going to move on to the World's Edge Mountains. The World's Edge Mountains being the primary homeland of Karaz-Kor, or the dwarf homeworld, homelands. And you'll notice there's not a whole lot of writing here. There's a lot of symbols. So you'll notice symbols, and you can't read a whole lot. But thankfully, it hasn't really changed a lot. This is the last map we have of the area, and it seems like everything is pretty much contiguous to what it was before. So you'll notice that Mount Gunbad, still roughly the same place. Zufbar, the Dwarf Hold, Karaz-Karak, still in the same place. Karaz-Drak, still an Orcish hold. Kirak 8 Peaks, it looks like they're still claiming it, even though it's a bit broken in the future. Now, there are some noticeable differences. For example, Karak Vlog, which was still very friendly here, has a symbol indicating that the dwarves are still there, is a broken hold, rumored hold in the future, because Karak Vlog was one of the ones destroyed during the Great War on Chaos. So there are some noticeable differences just due to the Great War on Chaos and the intervening centuries. Now, both maps did include Zorn-on-Kul, but this was much less detailed. Now, Zorn-on-Kul is the location of the Chaos Dwarves, and this map is much, much more detailed, which is great because it hopefully implies that we're going to be getting Chaos Dwarf models rather than the relatively unsupported Chaos Dwarves or just fan-made Chaos Dwarf conversions that we got from in the fantasy era, in the Old World era now, which would be great. We also noticed very heavily represented throughout the map are these little orcish holds. It looks like our greenskin friends are going to be having some fun here. I believe Azhag the Slaughterer was the primary antagonist on the greenskin side during this time period, but don't hold me to that. And that's it for what we know during this update. We already, just to recap a little bit, we do know that Warhammer the Old World is not necessarily just about the old world. We also know that there's a fully fleshed out world map. This is, of course, Cathay. We are going to be seeing that. We also know, if you took a look at the area right up here, the Khanate, the Hobgoblin Khanate stretches all the way to the World's Edge Mountains and unites both Cathay and the Kislevites and Dwarf Hold area. So there's absolutely some crossover that they're expecting us to be able to have Cathay and these Hobgoblin Greenskin hordes playing against each other. We are definitely going to be seeing some art and models coming out regarding this, because otherwise they're just investing some money that they wouldn't have to. And we also saw these beautifully rendered in Total War Warhammer 3, so there's some thought going into this, and hopefully we'll be able to see that realized on the tabletop as well. I'm glad that everybody tuned in today. This is my first kind of podcast on this subject. I've been really looking forward to doing this for a while, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me suggestions in the bottom, and click like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll be putting out some more videos on Warhammer and fantasy lore in general. Thanks so much.